You're now listening to the Something Good Podcast Network. Please press any key to continue.
Alright, and welcome to this episode of the Couch Brotatoes. I'm Alex.
This is Cap.
And we've got Jeff Williams with us this week.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
He is a dear friend of ours. You've been on the Something Good For You before. This is the first time on the nerd-centric show where we actually really get to dive in and show just how unbearable we can be to some women.
Oh, yeah. Talking about, I was talking about rock and roll, in which I'm ready to talk about Crazy Nights. Let's do it.
You mean the best Kiss
Wrong
album
show.
ever?
Oh, wrong show. Sorry, Russ. And actually, I didn't mean to say Crazy Nights. I meant to say Creatures of the Night.
I know all
Y'all
that
haven't
is
gotten
coming
to Crazy
soon.
Night. I mean, y'all haven't gotten to Creatures of the Night.
Not yet.
Not yet. To peel back behind the curtain a little bit, we're about to kick off Unmasked. We're actually recording that later tonight.
Well, you need to figure out a way to have like call-in guests. I know you don't do it live, but it's
Right.
like because it's like I want to call in and be like, because I know Russ is going to start shooting down Creatures of the Night real hard.
Oh, the 80s is going to be fun with him.
Yeah, so if you like Kiss Nerd Talk, definitely check out the other show on our network, the No Time to Turn Kiss Nerd Podcast.
See, I'm not even part of your podcast as a staff member or an on-air personality, but I'm plugging your own show for you.
Thanks, Jeff.
And you're the main co-host this week because even as the title says, the Couch Brotatoes with Chris Morrison, this is one of the few episodes Chris is not a part of. He's unfortunately had to work, but the nerds must press on. I must throw out his typical... I know he would have opened the show talking about the fact that he was disappointed that Joey Diaz was not Uncle Ben.
No,
Frankly, I am too.
That was an ongoing joke of his for a bit. At the end of the show, we usually say, and Chris, do you have any sort of final thoughts for us? And he's like, Peter, I fucked you at me. And he's just like, if he doesn't show up as Uncle Ben, I'm going to be so disappointed.
I've already seen memes where people are talking about who Uncle Ben was. I mean, who Uncle Ben was, and like I've seen like Joe Pesci.
I've seen that too.
Yeah, so that's for you, Chris. But as that goes on, Jeff, we already know about Chris's backstory on Spider-Man. What kind of kicked you off in actually knowing about our web-headed friend?
Well, I don't know Chris's age. You guys are like in the late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah,
Chris
he's in his
the same
late
one,
yeah,
yeah.
same.
I'm more pushing. I'm 50, going on 50 here in the next year or two. So I kind of grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I think most people my age know about Spider-Man from a couple sources. One would be the 1966 Spider-Man series, which they did one for most of your. They did one for Fantastic Four, they did one for Thor, Iron Man. They did a bunch of them, but the Spider-Man one was the real popular one. And when I was a kid, those were still, they would play those on TV. They would play those, those were still in syndication and reruns. So
right.
I would watch a lot of that. And then in the 80s, they had Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Yeah.
Which was Iceman and then Firestorm.
The things that is Firestorm or Firestarter.
And it was basically a character they made up for the show.
Yep.
Now, they have included them at some point. I think it was a her, right?
It was.
And they included her down the line, which I always thought it was weird. They had Spider-Man and Iceman.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like well, that's who you picked.
Yeah.
I mean, like you get this whole Marvel universe, and that's the guy you pick. Like an X-Man.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. I mean, I'm good with you. Whatever. we can do that. But so I knew about that, and now we live in a very where comic books are part of
pop culture psyche
the pop
at this
culture.
point.
They're very much embedded in pop culture. But when I was a kid, comic books were really, they were nerdy in a sense that, in a way that it's not cool to be nerdy.
Right.
Like, you didn't, when you was a kid, you didn't admit to liking comic books. You didn't, there was, if you had a comic book nerd in school, you had 2 or 3, and I was one of them.
Right.
And I got into comic books probably in the early to mid 80s because, did you ever have someone that used to go door to door, like kids would come, like, they would sell Girl Scout cookies or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they would sell magazine subscriptions that way as well when I was a kid. And I remember one time they came over and they had, you get Marvel subscriptions. And it was like $5. You get a year's.
Oh, wow.
But it was Transformers, G.I. Joe, and then it was like My Little Pony. Like, it was only like four you could choose from.
Right.
So I picked G.I. Joe, and my brother picked Transformers because those were hot at the time. I mean, like the toys and the cartoons were hot. So Marvel had a license to get that. So I would get G.I. Joe, and my brother would get Transformers. And the cool thing now is that those books are actually kind of well respected as far as comic book collectors go.
It's because they actually paid attention to the story.
Yeah,
also.
and they've aged pretty good. Well, anyway, because when you start reading them, you find out there's this is where Spider-Man the cartoon kind of comes from these comic books. So I would, whenever I could, I lived out in the country,
right?
So there wasn't comic book shops close to anywhere near I was, and very few places would have comic book racks.
Right.
But just it was impossible to get comic books unless we came all the way into Charlotte.
Yeah.
But I eventually, started getting them, and I started making my way, and I would just get whatever I could. I mean, if I had $3 in my pocket, comic books were 75 cents. I get what I could, and I always tried to get a Spider-Man comic, whether it was Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, Peter Parker, or Web of Spider-Man. Whatever they had, I would just try to get. And because it was real inconsistent, I would get let's say I got like Spider-Man 263. Well, the next time I was able to get an Amazing Spider-Man, it was like 271 or something. Right. So it would
not to mention that like Spectacular, Peter Parker, Amazing, and Web weren't the same stories. They were all completely different stories with different canons, things that have happened in that specific timeline.
Now they occasionally would all tell the same story, like Kraven the Hunter. They would all line up at the same time.
Yeah,
but for the most part, I always thought it was weird. It was like in the same month, Spider-Man's fighting the Green Goblin. On one side of town at the exact same time.
With a to be continued.
Yeah. At the exact same time he's fighting the Sandman. Right. And it's like, it didn't make sense. I always thought like, okay. I didn't really put too much. It didn't ruin it for me.
Yeah, but you also didn't like put enough thought into it. Yeah, I would think the same thing too.
So I got whatever, that really endeared me to Spider-Man and Marvel in general.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that Spider-Man is my favorite Marvel character, but I mean, he's up there. I mean, he's, I think he's, he's the DC. I mean, he's the Marvel version of Superman.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like their flagship property.
He's like Mickey Mouse. I mean, he's he's Bugs Bunny. He's the flagship character.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, I became a fan from a very early age back in the 80s.
And it's weird. Like, I love hearing stories about that because, like, I'm in my early 30s, so Spider-Man didn't really hit the outside of cartoons in the 90s. Spider-Man really didn't like permeate among, say, my friends across the board until the movies came out.
And the thing with me, I've kind of said that the 90s animated series was my intro to it. It's like I kind of had a few things lined up. Mom got me dual VHS set that had Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends episodes on it. So I grew up with those, and then she also got me a Doctor Doom box set of 2 Spider-Man episodes, and I swear to God, one of the episodes is Doctor Doom flying in a blimp. And that was like his main mode of transportation, and like, you will fear my blimp. And it's just like, oh no. and I also remember there was like an ad for like the Maximum Carnage SNES video game at the beginning of it, with like Carnage towering over New York City and it like turning red and all this other stuff. So it's like, that was my main. I remember liking all that. The weird thing is though, is I don't remember being excited for the movie to come out. that's the weird thing. I know I was a fan before the movie came out, and I was interested in the character. I had the action figures, all of it. For some reason, the idea of the movie passed me by. But I remember finding out about it like a year later when the DVD was coming out. That's when it finally like clicked. I was like, oh, I want to see that. She let me rent it. And it's like, I'm surprised the thing didn't warp. I watched it so many damn times after she bought it for me. And then after that, those were the years I started getting like the 60s animated series box set and everything else. So it's like, the comics was similar with you and me, though, because I lived in Gaffney, South Carolina, and there was no comic shops, though our Food Lion and Winn-Dixie still had the spinner rack. So it's like I could still pick up random issues of things there. But then I remember during Spider-Man 2 is when I got hardcore like hooked of like, Mom, I want the comics. I want comics, that kind of thing. She bought me a subscription through the mail thing, so I got a bunch of the Ultimate Spider-Man runs. Around that time is when you and Jeff, we went to one of the Comic-Cons here in Charlotte, and that was slowly feeding into that, and that's why I got that Ultimate Spider-Man thick book, because I had already started reading that line anyway. But then there was a comic shop in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And that was about maybe 40 minutes from us. So it's like the only time I could go over there is if we went to the mall. It was across the street from the mall. And I could beg her to let me spend like 15 minutes in there because she, for some reason, even then, it's like I didn't get it as much from my peers, but like Mom was still like, gotta deal with all these comic book shop people. So it's just like I was having to just deal with her. And she's like, it's like, and it was that weird dichotomy of like she always supported the things I liked, but she would do it very begrudgingly at times.
Comic book shop
Yeah,
people.
I mean, it's kind of like anything else. If you're not into that, if you're not a diehard on a lot of that stuff, it's hard to like be around it. You know, I mean, and that's really with anything. But
she enjoyed the movie. She would sit and watch the movie with me, and I kind of found out later on, actually this year, that she actually like remembered a lot from those movies because she would watch it with me. So apparently, she did enjoy the movie. She just could not stand being in a comic shop or around that kind of thing.
Well, comic culture is like anything, any other kind of like, I don't want to say subculture. It is
fan culture.
Well, whenever you're not immersed in it, you can feel a certain amount of snobbery.
Yeah,
there is.
I mean, like, and whether it's a comic book shop or like a tattoo shop,
our music fans,
like,
even
like let's say that's a good one. A guitar shop. Guitar shops and tattoo shops, I hate both of them. Cannot stand going to a tattoo shop and get a tattoo. Doesn't mean that I hate tattoo artists, but it just, you go in there and it's just nothing but talking about tattoos, and it's like, you get a real ballsy tattoo artist and he'll kind of look at your arm and be like, oh, you ought to have done this. Who did that? And it's,
and it's like, look, I'm not looking for critiques.
And then they start showing pictures like, yeah, I did this last week. And I'm like, and same way with guitar players.
No, he's absolutely right.
And so it's like comic book shops, they're no different. And you're talking about, I don't know how it is today, but comic book shops used to be run by guys who never got laid. So the only way they could really like flex is being who could know the more minutia of comic books over each other, and that's how they would like stick their chest out.
And that is,
which is funny.
And everything you're saying is totally true about that shop I went to. And the other weird thing about it too is, even though I was getting into it when things were stored, because I still see a difference between pre and post MCU with it being part of like subculture. So it's like it was becoming a lot more part of pop culture during that time of like the Spider-Man and X-Men movies, but not in Gaffney. Not in Spartanburg. They still weren't latching onto it. So it's like, even though I was digging into it, not a lot of people around me were. So I still kind of felt like that weird sense of like the 80s vibe of like, oh, well, this is still my thing and people are still laughing at me because I like Spider-Man, that kind of thing. So, because people were still much more interested in like the Matrix and things like that.
Your rural areas are always going to be a little bit behind.
Yeah.
You know, the rural America is always going to be a little more, I don't say reluctant. I don't mean it to sound snobby. They just don't.
Well, I mean, all three of us come from it, so
they
it's
don't,
like...
they don't dive into the newest pop culture trends or crazes at the time.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, being someone who was into comic book stuff at a very early age, and you know, before the boom of the comic book boom, which has been going strong now for 30 years.
Yeah.
It really has been. Maybe not to the degree that it is now, but back before 1988, it was nothing. There was no comic book culture. It didn't exist. Comic book conventions were very small. What had happened in 88 was Batman came out.
I was about to ask.
The Batman movie came out, and we finally got to see a semi-serious look at a comic book character done really good. Because, you know, Batman, before that came out, Batman was Adam West and kapow.
It was goofy.
Kablam.
It was goofy and it was campy, which is great.
Yeah.
It's great pop art from
Yes.
the 60s.
But is it a good representation of the character? Not fully.
So when the Batman movie came out, I mean, I would have camped out if I could have.
Yeah.
To see that movie. It was huge. It was a blockbuster, and it kind of started that love of what else can we do? We got a Batman movie. Like, what else can we do? And it was a real slow process.
Because the only other one that had any sort of success was Superman. So everyone's idea of the superhero was just the clean-cut, indestructible, alien.
Yeah, they did Superman in the 70s. In fact, it came out on the first Superman movie came out on my 5th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And
Nice.
I went to it. I saw it on my birthday. I remember it. But there was a real lag there. They tried doing other superhero things. They did Spider-Man TV shows. They tried doing
The Hulk.
Yep.
They tried doing the Hulk. The Hulk was
Mildly successful.
It was successful, but not for reasons. It wasn't MCU. It wasn't comic book accurate. It was really more of a drama than anything.
Cue the sad Hulk music.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was he was a loner, and it was a successful thing that worked.
But nothing as big as Superman until Batman came out.
Yeah, and
obviously.
Superman came did 4 movies. 2 were big. The 3rd one was big, but it was dumb, and then the 4th one was
just utter
was it.
Yeah.
and they had tried doing other Superman things like Clark and Lois, and they had tried doing some different things, and it wasn't taken. When they did Batman with Tim Burton, then studios were like, oh, we got something here. Now, it took a while before they were actually able to really do more. They tried a couple more times to do things. Everybody knows about the Fantastic Four movie, which was a whole documentary about that. They did Rocketeer. They tried.
A lot of obscure things.
They tried doing whatever they could.
And they even tried Spider-Man a few times. They didn't get through like any sort of actual test
Yeah,
screenings.
yeah,
but it was being passed around and getting different directors involved and
There
this
have
that, and
been
the other.
dozens of attempts to do Spider-Man, but thankfully they never did it.
Yeah,
before
they're going to be like a James Cameron Spider-Man.
Yes. James Cameron was supposed to do Spider-Man. But anyway, getting to so by the time we really started kind of figuring out this CGI thing with I'm kind of getting too long-winded here, but like
Not really, it's fine. We do it too.
yeah. But once they realized, okay, we might be able to really approach this by the early 2000s. They
It was like the X-Men.
the X-Men, and they put it out there, and it's real easy to look back now and just be like, wow, those movies really missed the mark on some things, but at the time
They were huge.
and it was the first time we ever got to see like real webs being shot out and swinging in a way.
Yeah.
And it's and we'll get more into that going in, but we could not get to where we are now without those early X-Men and
Spider-Man movies,
and even Daredevil.
with basically what came before.
Yeah.
Because it's still, like we were talking about, it's still a relatively new thing, a successful superhero movie, but now they're just, all over the place.
Churning
It feels
them
like,
out.
it feels like every 2 months it's a brand new one, and with bigger numbers, just kind of here and there too.
And actually, before we fully get into it, and not to get too deep in the woods, because Cap knows this. Have you finished Hawkeye yet?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to do a full retrospective on Hawkeye, but I feel like that's even kind of important to discuss for a second before even talking on this, because we've discussed now how important the original Raimi movies are, and now we find out that the Daredevil series through Hawkeye is now fully canonized. So it feels like the MCU right now is just kind of doing, look, everyone can play, which I think is kind of an interesting move by them. Because before they've been very much in the bubble of like, no, only what we, so go back to that nerd culture thing. No, only these little things in this bubble is going to be part of the canon, and we're going to make sure that this doesn't happen and this doesn't happen. And within the Loki series, and now Hawkeye, and now Spider-Man, because guys, if you haven't seen Spider-Man by now, A, come on, B, why are you listening to this? We can talk freely. Between these three movies, or three series now, they're kind of just going, look, everything's free game. So I wonder if they're going to do the same thing with the X-Men now.
Well, they've already have.
Have they confirmed that the X-Men series that we've seen is now part of the canon in some way, shape, or form?
Well, they already have. They had, we talked about this before. They've already utilized the Quicksilver from the X-Men.
Right. But he wasn't him technically.
No, but that was Marvel's way of winking at the viewer and being like, guess what?
Big things coming.
Mm-hmm.
Big things
the
are
same
coming.
Actor and everything.
And we're going to try to get what we can. They really, they want to be able to pull over as much as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And, a lot of that depends on behind the scenes business,
And it's always seemed to be a slow burn, but it always pays off.
Yeah.
Because even with the Matt Murdock's and all the Daredevil characters that we see in the Hawkeye series and all that, that's been a slow burn. Like, that entire series didn't come out until, 2012, 2013 on Netflix? It's been years.
I think it was at least 2014 or 2015.
Either way, it's been out for a while now, and they're just now being integrated into the MCU.
Well, once Netflix the contract ran out on the Netflix, Marvel had to wait 3 years.
Okay.
They had to wait 3 years from the last airing of that product, whenever it ran out, till whenever they could use it.
Okay.
It was a contractual thing that Netflix had kind of built in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So they've basically just been waiting for that non-compete.
Yeah. And we can talk about Murdoch in a minute, but I think that they're doing a fantastic job with keeping Kingpin really good. I think he was portrayed very well at the end of Hawkeye.
He was good on the Daredevil series, too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're doing a good job bringing over the right kind of characterizations.
Well, they did a smart thing, and of course you got to bring. No one's going to accept a Kingpin of anybody else.
Yeah.
You can't get any other fat guy, bald fat guy with to play that role that anybody will ever accept.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, and not until he dies, because as a fan of that kind of stuff, I don't want to see anybody else do it. Just like
Same with J. Jonah Jameson.
J.K. Simmons, I don't want to see anybody else attempt to do it, because it was done right the first time. Actually, there's been other Kingpins, but the one that we all know is Vince D'Onofrio. Did a real good job. The smart thing they did, though, is they tweaked him a little bit.
Yep.
Because he is, one thing, he's kind of low rent now.
Right.
You notice he did, he kind of had like the beaded curtain in his, and he didn't have a tie. He had like a open collar.
It was a callback to actually a Spider-Man issue of him in a Hawaiian shirt with the thing.
And he had the cane with the diamond, thing on the end of it, which is more comic book accurate of the 70s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they did that, and of course, I noticed it immediately, and it's been talked about. And I think they were smart the way they did that. Mm-hmm. I think that they were smart in the way that they did that, and I like the way that they brought him in, which really they didn't bring him into the Spider-Man, we really were talking about Spider-Man. But when they brought him in, they did that on purpose. Like they timed it with Sony with that movie coming out at the exact same time.
Absolutely.
They were smart about it.
Because that Kingpin episode aired the week before Far From No Way Home. They needed to change those home movies.
Spider-Man, Sweet Home Alabama.
Well, I understand what they're doing, but at the same time, it's like that was a little long-winded.
Well, the next three Spider-Man movies are going to be school. No, they are. They are.
Really?
There's going to be something
school days.
School's out for the summer. It's going to be school stuff, and then because there's 3 trilogies that are being planned, but we get more into that.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, no. So yeah, he got the tease, and the full. Did he only get the tease, and then was it the movie came out, and then it was the final episode?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like they did it just in time. You got your little tease of Kingpin, and then my ass was immediately sitting in that theater Thursday night. Which, side note, I know we've already gone long-winded. I have to go long-winded on this one too. I tried to kind of get stuff figured out for that movie ahead of time, couldn't, and then I got my tickets, and by that point in time, I had just gotten a new job. And I failed to think, let me see if I could get tickets near my work. No, for some reason, my dumb ass still picked the theater that's all the way close to home. So I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. The closest one I could, the best time I could find with like good seating was going to be at like 10:45. So I got off work at 8. And I'm like, okay, perfect. That's all going to work out fine. Well, got off work that day at 8. Checked the Ubers, and it was all like, 15 minutes like home. And I'm just like, okay, so I'm going to take an Uber all the way home, then a second Uber all the way to... No, that's going to be so much fucking... I'm just going to hang out here for a couple minutes. There's a Dave & Buster's. I'm going to hang out there, play some arcade games, and then head to the movie. I check the Ubers. I'm like checking it like every 15 minutes. I'm like, all right, I'm still good. And as soon as I click call on a certain one, it goes like 30-minute wait. I'm like, okay, fine. That's still going to put me there like right as probably trailers are starting. Second one cancels. Third one cancels. Everyone starts just dropping off. I quickly realized, oh yeah, everyone's getting off work right now at 9. Fuck! Everyone started dropping off, and it's so one of those situations where you're having that small miniature panic attack of like, no, this is opening night. I've already paid for my ticket. I've got to go do this now. And it's like, and then I had to, okay, doing that's not going to solve anything. Let me see if there's any open showings near me. And I found one. And so it's like, I got that, got a refund on the other, purchased the other ticket, got to the other theater with plenty of time. And I'm like, cool. Which theater is it? Or which room is it? Walk in the room, and I failed to realize that I purchased IMAX tickets in the second row. Yes.
Yeah.
During the scene when Peter and MJ are FaceTiming each other, I was literally whipping my head back and forth to catch those moments.
That's hard to do, man.
Yeah, that's happened to me once during Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Oh, it sucked.
Yeah, no. So my very first viewing, I still loved it, but it was very much inhibited by the viewing experience. So it's like I quickly got tickets for like a couple nights after. Got very good seats, and I enjoyed myself. Well, and it's like you had the nice kind of reclining chairs. So I was like reclined all the way back, like in hopes that was going to help some. Yeah, not really. But I will say, it's fucking intense. Like where I was sitting was like right where Doc Ock's claw like lands. So I will say certain scenes like that were intense as fuck. Seeing it come basically all the way from the ceiling and land directly in front of you. That's pretty cool.
I'm sure on opening night, I'm sure it was still fun because I imagine everybody was reacting, with applause and cheers. And
like during certain scenes. So, what? Do we just want to go just a quick kind of run through the movie, or do we just want to talk about what maybe our favorite scenes were?
I think we kind of talk about like what we each thought about as far as like overall. What do you think how do you? Like, what were your impressions? Good movie, bad movie?
It's probably my number 2 favorite Spider-Man movie. Spider-Man 2 is still going to be just number 1. I feel that's still just contained, filmed. It's like even the CGI holds up during certain scenes. It's like still you got rubber Spider-Man and super smooth skin Doc Ock in some scenes, but it's like exactly what you're saying earlier. You can kind of see past it because of the way Raimi did the rest of the movie. It almost fits because of his direction choices. This one, though, it's hard for me to say I love it and it's my favorite, because I do truly believe that you can only like this movie if you gave a shit about the character at all during the Sam Raimi or the second reboot versions. I feel like if you didn't really have an affection for those films, or if you're brand new to the game, and it's not trying to sound elitist, but it's like just by the simple fact that so many moments of that movie are hinged on the fact that you kind of grew up with the other two, I feel like you can't say it's the best movie. It's more of a fan service movie, but a fan service movie done right.
I think it's an accurate kind of analysis of it. Like, say if we went and saw a Batman movie and say Adam West and Michael Keaton came back in a parallel universe type scenario with a Batman movie, would
the typical 13-year-old be as moved as someone that grew up with those characters, actually getting to see them in the thing that we saw them grow up as?
Yeah.
Well, I think that it helps to know those things. I mean, I think that it helps to have been a fan to have the initial pop.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I had some surprises. And I don't think anybody listening to this is going to be surprised. I mean, like, you know, you did the spoiler alert thing.
Yeah.
I was surprised as being a guy that's 47, and I was in my 20s whenever the first one came out.
Right.
The original Sam Raimi one. So those are the ones that I am endeared to.
right.
And I don't think they're perfect movies.
No.
I think they did a lot of wonderful things. They were probably stronger in their casting more than they were anything else. They almost always casted perfect, those Sam Raimi movies. Better than any.
Willem Dafoe, Alfred Molina.
Yeah, even Tobey Maguire. I have no problem with Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
They had the best Aunt May. You know, they were smart enough. You know, everybody that they ever got. I love Thomas Hayden Church.
Yeah. And I like the idea that with Spider-Man 4, you were going to find out that Bruce Campbell was actually Mysterio. And that's why he kept showing up in Peter's life as different characters. So, like, even that would have been a really cool cast.
Now, I expected for people to be happy to see Tobey Maguire. I really did. But when, I don't know about the theater you went to.
Yeah.
Whenever
Andrew Garfield
swung through, everybody cheered.
Yeah,
everybody
same
in
here.
the audience cheered.
Yep.
And I was like, that's odd, because I just always assumed everybody thought they were as terrible as I did.
Yeah.
But I was wrong.
He stole the show, I thought.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But I was really surprised that people cheered for Andrew Garfield coming on. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't give a shit, because it's like I didn't like those Andrew Garfield movies. I thought both of them were garbage.
Yeah.
And I thought they were doing him a favor by allowing him to be in that movie.
Right.
And I thought that, okay, this kind of gets into what they were doing. You said that there's a lot of fan service, and I completely agree with that. But that film was a maintenance film as well.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what I mean by that is it had to accomplish several things. First off, you had to wrap up this 3-movie arc, this 3-movie trilogy. And you also had to plant the seeds for the next trilogy, which they did. We'll get more into that with the
ending,
with the post-credit scene.
Yeah.
But what they did, Sony, the MCU, Marvel to a degree, they had a real problem on their hands, because this is the third time they've done a Spider-Man franchise.
Yeah.
And, this has been the most successful, franchise for the attempt at doing Spider-Man. The problem that they had is, do we want to see another Green Goblin? They already tried another Green Goblin. It was terrible.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like, do we want to do another?
He didn't get invited back.
No. do we want another Doc Ock? I mean, so in their wisdom, they wisely said, we can't reboot all these characters.
Yeah.
We can't go through all these movies and like give everyone their time to shine. What can we do here? They were so smart. They said, we're not going to do an origin story in the first place. You already know what the origin is. It's already been done twice.
Yep.
And we have 2 other Spider-Man that are still relatively in good shape that everybody remembers. How can we, like, you know, we're not going to make people forget about Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire or their cast of characters for their respective franchises. Well, let's not try to make people forget it. Let's include them. Let's make them canon.
Yeah.
And the way they did it, and the way they have set up for years previous with multiverses and quantum realms and you know timelines,
Yep.
which is going to be how things are for a while. They piggybacked previous franchises.
Yep.
And that's why it was maintenance. They were wrapping all that up.
On top of that, they already had, I imagine, a lot of moviegoers and, like, you know, more casual Marvel fans like myself thought that Endgame was going to be the peak. But now we've got a movie that checks all those boxes and holds up the maintenance, like you brought up, that not only does that successfully, but adds a new, a new thing for older audience members and, more diehard fans of Spider-Man to latch onto and to kind of, you get that nostalgic audience to come see this movie and bring new success. I'm terrible with my words today, but my point is that we thought Endgame was going to be the peak, but now we have a new peak with the Spider-Man movie because of, you know, all the things that you mentioned.
Oh yeah, I mean, even internally they were referring to this as Spider-Man Endgame.
Yeah.
And something that you kind of touched on that I find very interesting. You said, you know, we're not going to do an origin film. You know this kid's origin. I think they masterfully told his origin film in 3 movies. So this may be getting a little bit ahead of himself, but hear me out here. At the very end of this movie, you see Peter completely broken. He's lost his he's lost his Aunt May, which kind of fit in for his Uncle Ben character. We finally heard the sentence.
Yeah.
Toby and Andrew kind of draw the parallel to Aunt May being his Uncle Ben, now kind of implying that maybe he didn't really have an Uncle Ben, or Uncle Ben wasn't that important in his life, which is fine now in retrospect when you look back at everything, because he maybe didn't have a reason to be that the selfless character. If you look at those previous 2 movies, the main complaint all the big fans had was he's so reliant on the Tony Stark, tech. He's like Iron Man Jr. is a completely new thing. He hadn't learned the responsibility portion yet because Tony was giving him everything. But we as the moviegoers looking at it going, but he's Spider-Man. He's supposed to be... Well, they just tweaked his origin again. He was actually Spider-Man for a much longer time before he learned his true power and responsibility, which shows at the end of the movie, no more tech. He's finally in New York City. He never lived in New York City before. Now he's actually in New York with a police scanner, his homemade suit, and he made the responsible choice of not talking back to MJ and telling her who he actually was because he saw the Band-Aid. So it's like the boy finally learned true responsibility. He finally reached his end point, like we need him to in the comic books. So they actually told his origin story across 3 movies. That's kind of the way I look at it now. And now, at the end of that movie with his final swing, we have the Spider-Man we've wanted since Tobey Maguire's films.
He is no longer a Spider-Boy. He is now
Spider-Man.
a Spider-Man.
So that's kind of my overarching theory, just talking about not even needing the origin story. We didn't, but we got one anyway in a very interesting way.
With his Emperor Palpatine Lego toy that Disney just flexed at the very end.
Well, because that was his connection to Ned. So it's like his connection to MJ is the coffee cup. His connection to Ned was the little Palpatine figure because they were always working on that Death Star together.
Okay.
So he still cares about them. He still is going to remember them, but his responsible choice to keep them out of harm's way, whether they want it or not, is to still remain incognito.
I watched this movie with a friend of mine and his wife, who's pregnant, and this will matter in the story, because like she's like getting all emotional during a lot of the parts where you're supposed to get emotional, but at the very end where he goes to that apartment and he's setting everything up and has his GED study books and everything. She started crying during that, going like, he's not even gonna finish school.
Well, see, and even, I mean, again, we're really getting ahead of ourselves, but it is such a really good, interesting scene, especially since we're talking about what made the other movies important. It's like, it was very much a mirror image of Peter's the Spider-Man 2 apartment, you know, give me your rent. It's like, it was this tiny little rundown thing. And it's like, there was a lot of really cool poetic comparisons. And if you look at the suit, people have posted high-def images of it recently. The front spider chest has the Tobey Maguire spider, and the back has the Andrew Garfield one. So they've actually combined the two spider logos for his new suit. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm sure that'll change.
It will, but it's still an interesting little homage to being like, you know, him understanding now who he is, wearing a part of the other Peters that know who they are.
Jeff brought up a good point about how Andrew Garfield's response was arguably bigger than...
Okay, so let's jump back to that. No, mine wasn't bigger. But mine was interesting. So my thoughts in the theater when the crowd was really cheering and going on for Andrew was... they're excited because they know the anticipation. Because if Andrew shows up, Toby has to show up. So that's more or less kind of what I felt my audience was doing. Like, as soon as I knew it was him, as soon as he turned around, I saw the eyes. And it's like the nerd is like, oh yeah, that's the Amazing Spider-Man 2 costume. So it's like, I knew immediately, but as soon as he took off the mask, everyone was like, whoa, and a quick little clap. But the thing was, is as soon as Ned went, show me Peter Parker. And and the other one, like as soon as the portal opened up behind him, before the camera even moved to show it was Tobey Maguire, as soon as that one happened, so like 3 people in the back went, "Oh shit! Oh shit!" like that. And as soon as they showed him, everyone, like even the dude beside me that had been like a stone the entire time, even he didn't make noise, but even he was like. Like that, and I'm just like, really? Like, this felt like the worst kept secret in Hollywood. Like, people were honestly surprised it happened.
Oh, my mom said the same thing when I asked her about that scene. She didn't anticipate Andrew Garfield to come back, but she said the exact same thing. When he popped up, her first thought was, is Tobey Maguire going to come back too?
Mom said the same thing when she didn't know that was going to happen. But like, as soon as she leaned over, she's like, was that the other one? I was like, yeah. She goes, oh, are we going to see Tobey? And I'm like, watch the movie.
Well, you know, that's not the experience that I had. I mean, there was a little bit of, you could hear some people gasp a little bit, but it wasn't near as much of a pop as for Tobey Maguire as there was for Andrew Garfield.
Really?
Yeah. And there wasn't much for me. Listen, those guys did a good job. Andrew Garfield surprised me more because, like, I felt like he was kind of like the heart of it.
Yeah,
I do too.
Like, I think Andrew Garfield kind of redeemed himself. I mean, he kind of made himself more human. My problem with Andrew Garfield has always been he was too good looking and too. I've heard that over the years too. He was too hip.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
but you know what? I feel like they fixed it a little bit in this one, and the reason being, he was still as good looking and handsome as always, which is now my entire Facebook feed. Like every fucking chick nerd friend I have is like every single post is something about goddamn Andrew Garfield. So it's like, yes, I get that part, but they made his dorkiness a little bit more, which offsets the good looking, which means that even though he may be a little bit better looking, his dorkiness is still keeping him from maybe having that full potential that his looks are giving him.
Stuttering, gorgeous Spider-Man.
They did a really good job with both of those guys, and I'll be honest with you, those guys were in the movie a lot longer than I thought they would be.
Me too. My prediction was they were going to show up. Okay, during the trailer scene, Doctor Strange is on the new and improved Statue of Liberty. I thought they were going to come through during that scene. He's going to be fighting everyone, failing, and it's just like all of a sudden, they swing in. Hey, buddy, you need some help.
I thought you were literally going to see each one for 5 minutes with maybe a minute of crossover with all 3 of them. I thought they would. I didn't think they would take up that much of the film.
They were in like half of the film.
They did a fine job with it. Me personally, the big ooh moment was the Charlie Cox.
Yes.
That meant more to me than the other two.
Yeah. So actually, let's kind of roll through it, because now that we've kind of gotten over some of the big points, let's run the movie. So it opens up immediately where the second one left off, with J. Jonah Jameson with the perfect Alex Jones parody. He's outing Spider-Man, big swing through the city. And then due to all of that crap, he's not getting into college. And that moment in which they're getting like interrogated and shit, that's where we get our first moment with Charlie Cox. And I was excited for that one when it happened, because it was like, oh, that was one of the big surprises for me. That one didn't get leaked. I had a feeling it was coming.
Well, I knew it was coming. I mean, I had heard that he was going to.
Me too. Yeah.
I mean, and I even knew that he was going to be at the kitchen table.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's already kind of been out there. Like,
see, I bypassed that one.
Well, I mean, what's his name? The Tom Holland.
Yeah.
He kind of let the cat out of the bag that there was, that he was at the, they filmed a scene at the table and he can't really talk about it. He was so excited.
Oh, okay.
And I was just like, and a lot of people were speculating that it was Charlie Cox, and I'm glad. I mean, I'm glad that it was. I think they did it really good. They didn't have him as Daredevil.
Caught the brick.
But he caught the brick. He did, he had one little like mini action scene.
Yep.
And
how did you do that? I am a really good lawyer.
Yeah.
Well, what was funny is, they used that moment to tease the She-Hulk series.
Yep.
Because when he said, you're going to need a really good lawyer.
Yep.
He wasn't talking about himself. He's talking, you're going to see Jon Favreau in that. I mean, it might just be a second. It might just be, a cameo. But, they're really good at doing that.
No, and I thought that scene really was great, and Mom loved it because she liked the Netflix series. So it's like, if I was surprised going into it, I knew she was. I knew she was gonna not expect it at all. So it's like, when I felt that scene coming, it's like I had my eyes kind of cut watching her, and as soon as he showed up, like her face just lit up. She goes, oh, "I know him." I'm like, I know.
I thought that scene was great too, because I love the Daredevil series too.
Oh yeah, no, seeing him part of that just made me excited for like what the future could bring, because I would like to see a Spider-Man Daredevil team up. They work well together in the comics.
I want to know what he did to lawyer him out of the whole thing, because they spent the first 5 minutes going like, Spider-Man's a fucking murderer, and then Charlie Cox shows up and it's like, you're good.
Well, they kind of explained it in the movie. I kind of missed it the first time, but watching it a second and third, I kind of understood what they were saying, which was he was just able to make a really good defense that because it was Tony Stark's stuff,
right?
Peter, since he has no ties to Tony Stark whatsoever, technically, he's free game, and that it was like all property, that none of it actually belonged to Peter, which is why he kept looking at Favreau happy and just being like, you're still fucked, but I got this kid off.
That's the movie in the movie that I want to see, just him lawyering up.
Oh yeah,
I think it's just, it was one of those things where it's like, don't think about it too hard,
right?
Yeah.
just know that he got him off.
Yeah.
like it's really not important. It's in it.
Of course.
It's kind of like any movie that we watch where you're like, well, they wouldn't actually be that way. People wouldn't really react that way.
Yeah.
Just accept it.
Yeah, it's a comic book movie.
Just accept it. It's a comic book movie. Super lawyer went in there and said some words, and now everybody's free.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, in real life, it happens all the time.
Yeah. That's probably the most believable part of the movie, y'all.
In the real world, it happens all the time. So,
he is the most famous person in the world.
And they use that as a vehicle to like bring up Charlie Cox and the Daredevil character, Matt Murdock character, and which I'm happy about it. I'm a little nervous about it because I don't know how I feel about them bringing Matt Murdock into the MCU because you kind of have the Batman problem,
right?
It's like, well, Batman works great in Batman.
Yeah, Daredevil's essentially Batman, just blind.
Yeah,
just a ninja with hypersensitive.
But you take Batman and you have him in a world where half the people are superhuman, have superhuman strength, and can fly and have heat vision. Well, what's Batman do? Well, he's there, and he can make a difference, but
he's like their tech guy.
It's like, he's an IT guy.
Yeah.
Their T guy.
I mean, Daredevil works similar, where it's like, well, he's great at this, like, at this street level stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But then, like, when you start having aliens and shit and everything, it's like,
Well, I think they handle him like they handled Hawkeye, which I think in that series they kind of answered that question pretty well. You know, so what does someone like Hawkeye do? Someone that doesn't have any superhuman strength, that doesn't have any special abilities other than he was hired by some people due to his, fighting skills. That's basically all he's got is, good fighting skills. Any of us could train for 10 years and get really fucking good fighting skills like that. So it's like he's just a typical person. So what would he do? What does he truly bring to the fight? He brings himself. So I feel like they're kind of answering that even in Hawkeye because he's fighting someone like Kingpin. He's dealing with someone on the street level that doesn't necessarily require an Iron Man or a Thor to deal with. That might be a little bit overkill. It's like we need someone like a Hawkeye, like a Spider-Man. That's why he always kind of was odd on the Avengers. He's outclassed by nearly everyone except for Hawkeye. So it's like, why is he on the Avengers? Well, because he wants to be there. He wants to just make a difference. Otherwise, he is good as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Deal with the guy in the rhino suit. That's a bit above Thor's pay grade.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the reason why, because the Daredevil stuff is so much more cerebral.
Yes,
it's so much. It's traditionally, the Daredevil character kind of gets deep and it has religious overtones.
Well, I mean, Moon Knight does too, and we're about to get that.
And it's going to be interesting to see how they integrate Charlie Cox and Matt Murdock. But I'm open to it. I think the Marvel, the MCU as a whole, not just Spider-Man, is like they're at the fork in the road now.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we can go, everything up until now has been one road. And it's all centered around the Avengers to a point,
And the Infinity Stones.
And that's been from day one.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, now we're going to start branching off into some other avenues. We have your street level type and your essentially just like
God types
and your science fiction-y and you're
going right into where I think
fantasy. So they're really going to start kind of branching off. You're not going to see Gamora show up on Cap and the Winter Soldier. They're going to stay in that and they're going to kind of branch off and they're doing it, I guess, pretty good.
Honestly, that it touches on something I was kind of thinking that they're going to do. I think it's going to make the Avengers movies more important when everyone does team up now, because they said they're still going to do Avenger movies. But think about it. So we've got like a Spider-Man, Daredevil, Hawkeye class that's handling New York and small threats. And then we've got Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor. They're about to be on their own separate adventure. So now we've got our space crew. And then, you've also got, all the other little small things. So I honestly think they're kind of making tiers of stories, where it's like now we've got our low-level threat movies, our mid-tier movies, our high-tier movies, and then when we've got to, which I think we can discuss this later if you want to, but I think the next big bad, and it's not going to be Kang, is what's going to force everything to have to smash together and do another Avenger movie.
Well, I think you're going to be a while before you see an Avenger movie.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think you're talking 4 years.
Oh, definitely.
They're going to give that a time to rest, because whenever the Avengers come back, there ain't going to be a Hawkeye. There ain't going to,
Well, there will be, but her name will be Kate Bishop.
Yeah, it'll be Kate Bishop, but you won't see Clint Barton, Jeremy Renner.
No Chris Evans, Captain America.
You won't be, it's going to be all new people, as it should be. But really, because the Spider-Man thing is going to die down now, you're not going to see a Tom Holland Spider-Man for a little while. What you are going to see is you're going to start seeing Reed Richards,
or X-Men,
and you're going to start seeing X-Men.
Yep,
and that's what's going to take.
That's going to be your new mid-tier movies.
Those are going to be the ones that build up to like the big multi.
Well, that's why I said I think Galactus is going to be the next Avengers movie.
Maybe. I'm not going to say yes or no. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm terrible at this stuff. I'm terrible at predicting this stuff.
Start recalling ball games and shit like that.
Hey, I'll put it on record. I don't care.
What's the over/under on Dr. Doom?
I was way off on my endgame predictions.
Oh, yeah,
I don't
same
care.
here. I mean, I was too, but I'm not always off. And I think that the way they do it is that Marvel creates a buzz over here, and then you forget about this thing.
Yep.
And then they come over at, they, like, for instance, White Vision.
Yeah.
Where's White
He's
Vision?
still out there.
He's just out there.
Yeah.
Well, he's going to show up at some point, and it'll probably be a couple of years from now. And he's going to show up, and everybody's going to cheer for a minute.
Yeah.
Probably, I'll do this as a segue, probably in the new Doctor Strange movie.
Maybe.
I mean, Wanda's in it, so...
Yeah.
I think we're just going to see the kids show back up again.
It's interesting. I'm hoping.
We'll get to that though. I think we can probably wrap up and talk about that one because it ties in with a lot. But that's also a good segue into what happens next in the movie, which is
Doctor Strange. We're not... or he gets involved. He's in the movie. How did we feel about Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange in this movie?
Listen, Benedict Cumberbatch has not done one bad thing yet in the MCU.
I don't think so either.
He's been in my favorite movie. I mean, Doctor Strange is my favorite.
Well, that's what
Really?
I kind of wanted to ask. How do you think? Do you kind of look at him and his role in that as the shut up? It's a movie. Because it really feels like he just went overboard and like was kind of irresponsible with what he was doing. Because my initial theory after seeing the What If was that was actually evil Doctor Strange. Why else would he do something like that?
No,
And it seems like he would have also explained to Peter, who he does know as a kid, being like, look, when I start this, you need to shut up. Or, okay, well, you're saying everyone. Are you sure there's not anyone you still want to know? Let's talk through the spell a little bit more.
Well, that's kind of getting into the. That's kind of like. That's getting a little over nuanced. I mean, like, yeah, you can say that well, he should have done this or he should have done that. At the end of the day, he didn't. And if you're just talking about in the reason why the movie happened the way that it
just kind of did. Okay.
The reason why that it happened the way that it did is doesn't really matter that much. I mean, the blame isn't on Doctor Strange. I mean, what he was going to do would have worked.
Yeah.
Had Spider-Man or
That
Peter
fucked it
Parker
up.
not like
Changed it in the middle of the
things
damn
happen.
spell.
You know, he was the one that caused everything to happen. I mean, and he just kept making things worse and worse. Every move he did was worse and worse.
Yeah.
So I think that the Doctor Strange aspect is still in. You know, I don't think he's lost any. I won't say credibility. I think he is still
Doesn't take away from it.
didn't take away from
Yeah.
Doctor Strange, and he's my favorite part of the MCU anyway right now.
I loved his fight with Spider-Man, and I
Yeah.
loved the fact that Peter knew what kind of hexagonal shape or kind of like weird things was going on. He's like, oh shit, this is math. You're really good at math. And it's like, that's how he actually defeated Doctor Strange, was through math. It actually showed his geeky, nerdy, smart side to defeat magic. And I thought that was cool. And honestly, my favorite character in this whole movie was goddamn Green Goblin. That was the Willem Dafoe we deserved, quote unquote, back then, because it was cool because he got his second in the helmet and everything else before he was zapped back to the basement. But then after that, they set it up really well where they showed his Jekyll and Mr. Hyde personality, and he was like in his clear frame of mind, and he's like no, and smashes the helmet. Perfect setup. Also, he goes to Feast, and that's where he gets the garb. And that's where he just gets a hoodie and like torn up clothes.
I like that
it's
move too.
Yeah, they were real smart about that. I think that. Okay, listen. They could have kept him in the Power Rangers outfit. It wouldn't have bothered me,
Right?
Because at the end of the day, it's Willem Dafoe who's making you like or not like that character.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe is just he's great. So,
But they were smart to get him out of the helmet.
oh yeah, though they were. That helmet has not aged well,
No.
but it wouldn't have killed it for me.
Right.
And I think that I don't know what they did. They upgraded the armored version of his suit a little bit.
Yeah.
Just to be a little bit more threatening. I mean, the original just looked like a Power Rangers.
That's what I always said too.
And So I think they did a good job on all of them. I didn't give two fucks about Jamie Foxx in the first time he played that character.
I didn't either, but he was great.
He was great in this. I always thought Thomas Hayden Church got fucked more than anybody because his, I love the Sandman, and like that movie, everybody hates that movie.
Yeah.
And
he got a funny scene in that one where he sits on the couch and he's like, sorry.
Yeah.
He's like trying to clean it and just making it worse.
But I like the fact that they had him, and he was kind of a good guy,
Yes.
Yeah. Because in the comic book, he was kind of a good guy. He kind of went back and forth. Where everybody else is a super scientist, he's just a low level thief.
Yeah.
I thought they did all that really good. What I don't like about the movie and them using all those guys is that part of the maintenance they were doing is like, okay, we have the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. Here's all these characters that everybody wants to see. Say bye.
Yeah.
Say bye because guess what? We're going to give you 3 movies with Venom now.
Well, so I want to talk about something interesting. Let's get super nerdy, and then we'll kind of wrap up because I know you need to go here soon. This is what's kind of created an interesting timeline paradox for me. Okay, so in the movie, during the Doc Ock exposition, you find out that people are being pulled from their universe the moment they realize who Peter Parker is. Okay, so for Doc Ock, it's that moment right before he's about to sacrifice himself, and Peter takes off the mask, and he's like, Peter. So he gets pulled immediately then, because I think the scene after is what he's talking about, where he's got him in his grip. So that's as soon as he gets pulled. Norman gets pulled at Thanksgiving, which is way before Spider-Man 2. Now, I'm not going to worry about Sandman because that technically still wraps up that universe. That doesn't change anything. But if we want to go by Endgame rules and Loki rules, that created 2 branch timelines in Tobey's universe. So now there's 3 separate Tobey Maguire universes. Because there's a universe in which Norman finds out Peter's Spider-Man, gets zapped right back to Thanksgiving, and goes, "Oh, okay." Doesn't have that blow up with with his son. Doesn't have the big fight with MJ. All of a sudden, that entire universe changes. Who knows if even Doc Ock gets his powers? Because I feel like part of what happened on that was after Norman's death, Harry didn't fund him well enough, which is the reason he had to do things kind of low rent. Because in this movie, you kind of see he and Norman have a bit of a relationship. So possibly Harry didn't fund Octavius enough, and that's why he even had the accident in the first place. Now there's a second timeline where Doc Ock gets zapped back into that universe and still dies. They didn't save him at all. Well, where he gets pulled, he still has to sacrifice himself.
Well, you know who Yingwei Malmsteen is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yingwei Malmsteen's in the studio.
Where's this going?
And he does like all this tapping and stuff. And he messes up.
Right.
And he goes, okay, listen back. You hear that? I had a note mess up there. No one gives a shit. Yeah. no one.
See, that's where I'm at too.
All those like little loose ends. Listen. When you start getting into time and multiverses and parallel universes and all this stuff, if you want to enjoy it, just be good with the fact that there's going to be so many fucking plot holes. Yeah, I mean, okay, I'll throw you 2.
Okay,
you may have thought of them, you may not. First one is from this movie. It's like, okay, well, they made everybody forget about Peter Parker.
Yes.
Well, what about all the signs that said Peter Parker and all the printed material? I mean, does that stuff disappear?
Yeah. I think it all just changes to Spider-Man as a menace.
Or does it just turn into? I mean, does the paperwork and all that stuff? Does all the news footage that's on hard drives where they have talked about Peter Parker, all the court documents, do those things just disappear? I mean, sure, you made everybody forget about Peter Parker, but you didn't make people forget about. I mean, like you didn't make things disappear.
Yeah,
this is the movie in the movie.
And you know what? And there's a little bit of theory behind that too, because MJ is still wearing her Black Dahlia necklace that she got during their trip. So clearly, not everything he's touched or been a part of disappears.
Yeah.
So that's even furthers your point on that one.
And the other one, this is kind of goes back to the end game. But how did they fix everything? They went to the quantum realm, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the quantum realm does what? It sends you back in time. Correct.
Yes.
I mean,
Well, it sends you into a point in time.
but we are in agreement that it puts you into the quantum realm, and when you come out, you're in a different point of time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, is it also like geographic? Did it change your geography?
It's Back to the Future rules.
Yeah, where you can kind of...
No. I ain't talking about Back to the Future rules means like if you go back in time, you're still in that exact same spot. You're just in a different time.
Right.
But whenever they went to the quantum realm, they showed up on Vormir.
Oh, well, because remember they had the little wrist things. They were able to calculate where they were going to go. Remember, because different people had to go in different places.
Yeah, but I get that. I just don't understand. Like, well, make up a little bit of science on how that works.
I feel like they did a little bit. No, I see what you're talking about.
It's like,
I see what you're talking about.
Send us a DM. Let us know your thoughts, listeners.
I mean, if that is the way that it really works, then transportation as we know it would cease to exist. The airline industry would cease to exist. Cars would cease to exist.
Well, Tony Stark invented it right before he died.
And it's like, well, I got to go across town. I'm just going to jump in the quantum realm, and I come out in 3 minutes. In 3 seconds. Down the street.
Well, and I feel like the bald headed lady, the majestic one, whatever her name is, she kind of explained that too. When you hop into it, when you jump into the past. The past is now your current future.
You talking about the
Ancient
Sorcerer
one.
Supreme?
Yes. So she kind of explained there. So like even when you use the quantum realm and you jump it back into the past becomes your new future, and you've basically cut the tail on the timeline you were on.
But see, that's my whole point about all the stuff I'm saying.
Right.
Who gives a fuck? I mean, like you can sit there and just like Kiss nerds do to a point, you can put the magnifying glass so over it, you take the fun away from it.
Yeah.
It's like just.
I'm the guy that goes to
it.
movies just to have fun and be entertained.
Just accept it. Accept the solo for the way how it's fucked up. Accept all the loose ends with the timelines. It doesn't matter. I mean, and that's the way I approach it.
Yeah. Well, let's at least leave on a positive note. What was probably your favorite moment, or the moment that surprisingly got you, like, because it's an emotional movie, so it's like what maybe hit you the hardest emotionally you weren't expecting? We'll start with you, Cap.
Probably the Aunt May death scene.
Okay.
When she says, with great power comes great responsibility. I'm like, oh, at first I'm like, oh, that's nice. Then she starts fading a little bit. I'm like, oh, no.
See, as soon as she said it, I knew it was coming, because I'm just like, everyone dies after saying that.
Yeah, I was crying for a little bit after that.
Yeah. No, that was a good one. And one of my favorite fight scenes, actually. The big one at the end was a little bit whatever. My favorite one was the first one with Green Goblin at that feast right before he does kill Aunt May. So there was that scene where Peter is on his shoulders just wailing on his face, and he stops just long enough for Norman just to throw out that cackle. And it's like, I literally got goosebumps when that happened. I'm like, that's fucking great.
You think with the Aunt May death scene, I know a lot of people got emotional over that, but I think part of it too is Marissa Tomei's performance, and how kind of like a delusional optimist that she was seeing the good in people, and I think that's what added to that scene too, because when she was like taking Goblin in, we as fans of the old movies are like, no, this guy's a monster, you can't take him in, this stupid bitch. But then when it happens, you're like, oh, this poor woman. Oh no.
But I think her instilling that is also what helped Peter become the true Spider-Man.
I think so,
because
too.
he was missing that in his personality trait. So
yeah, he was missing the earthquake moment.
Yeah.
I never liked her as Aunt May. I like Marissa Tomei, but I don't like a hot Aunt May.
Yeah.
I mean,
I get that.
I think the original Aunt May is the best, and the only kind that it should be an old woman.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that the original Aunt May was perfect. I don't want hot.
You don't want sexy Aunt May.
I don't want sexy Aunt May. And people of my age, maybe you guys, I don't know, people of my age, she's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No.
So it's like
She's always been hot.
Aunt May. I don't have any, and I never liked. I don't like the MJ.
Didn't like
I
Zendaya.
never have liked her as MJ because it's just an age thing.
Yeah.
Like to me, MJ is supposed to be out of Peter's league.
Right.
She's supposed to be taller. She's supposed to
But she's
be
among
glamorous.
the gang.
But she's part of the gang.
Yeah.
And it's like okay, listen, I'm wrong. No, I'm wrong. It's the same as we were listening to that Kid Rock thing.
Yeah.
It's like something might be wrong, but if everybody likes it,
Something's happened.
maybe we're wrong.
I
Who
mean,
knows?
and I don't dislike her as an actress. I just I want my kind of Spider-Man, my kind of Mary Jane. I just wanted to be the way that I wanted to be.
Right.
Yeah.
That being said, it didn't ruin it for me. If I had a favorite part, I mean, I don't want to say that. It's hard to say what my favorite part would be. It had nothing to do with Marissa Tomei or the fact I'm glad she died.
Right.
Not because fuck her. I like when characters die. Like Han should have died in Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
No, he should have. I mean, like I like it whenever key characters die.
Like that earthquake moment for
as you as
protagonist.
a viewer, it gives. I don't know. It kind of draws you in more. I was glad that I knew she was going to die as soon as he zeroed in on her.
Oh yeah. As soon as the
I was
glider
like-
showed up, I was like,
and whenever when she stood up, I was like, I don't give a shit. She's going to die.
Yeah.
And I was glad, not because I don't like her, but because that's what you need to give the story a little bit more gravity, give a little bit more weight.
And then that part with Andrew Garfield showing up kind of gives the
That-
movie brevity
Well, I
after that moment.
Well, I was gonna say my favorite fight scene was the first Goblin scene. The one that hit me the hardest was actually him saving MJ, because I did not care for those two Amazing Spider-Man movies, but a broken clock is still correct twice a day. In the Amazing Spider-Man 2, her death scene was genuinely good. Like, not maybe the way
the
she
Gwen
got,
Stacy? Yeah.
maybe not the way she got there, but the whole way it was filmed, shot, the way he's trying to save it, and even the animation of like when the web goes out, it kind of shows the form of a hand. So it's like it was done very well, and even to the point of like he did save her, but it wasn't the traditional like grabbed her by the foot and her neck snapped. For a second, you think he's got her, because she just kind of, but that tensile strength of the web he did not account for, and that's when she smacked her head on the floor. And the whole scene of like him just kind of realizing what's happening and all that, it was very emotional. And again, bad movie can have a good scene. So it's like that was always like the one bit I was like, damn, that was really good. So because Toby always mentioned his reason for being was Uncle Ben. Andrew kept bringing up, well, I lost my girlfriend, Gwen, my MJ, and I've never been able to forgive myself for that. And then talking about, he quit pulling his punches and everything else. So it's like you could tell that Spider-Man was still carrying that hurt more than Uncle Ben. So for him saving MJ and then him breaking down like that, oh my God, that ripped me fucking apart. I was just like, God, he got his redemption.
Yeah.
Well, before we leave, we need to talk about the post-credit scenes.
Yeah.
Really
Yes.
just the scene. I mean, the second
trailer.
One, the second one's just a trailer.
Yeah.
And y'all can talk about that. I mean, I'm looking forward to that movie, the Doctor Strange movie.
Oh, yeah.
But so if you haven't seen it, you know that it's
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy
as Venom, or is he Eddie Brock in this version of Venom?
No, it's okay. So
Yes.
that actually trails back a little bit further in the recent Carnage movie. The post-credit scene on that one is Eddie Brock laying in the bed and Venom's talking shit to him, and he's like, if I told you everything about the hive mind of the multiverse, your puny little head would explode. And he goes, okay, well, try me. And as soon as he starts, he gets sucked into the MCU. And he sees on TV J. Jonah Jameson ripping on Spider-Man, and the Venom character takes over him, and he's like, that guy. Well, in the post-credit scene, who shows up? Tom Hardy, Venom, is sitting at the bar, and the bartender is basically giving him a play-by-play of everything that's happened.
yeah, that scene was clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First off, so I mean, just so you know, I don't like the Venom.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him yet.
I don't like Venom. I didn't like him in the 80s when he first came around. I hated him in the 90s whenever he had to be in everything, in every comic book. It's not my favorite character.
Yeah.
It was clever seeing the way they did it. What they basically said was, okay, these Spider-Man, I mean, these Venom movies, they're not in the MCU.
Yep.
If anything, they're probably in the Andrew Garfield
That's
universe.
what I'm thinking.
So when you see, now you're going to see two Venoms.
Yep.
Because you're going to have the Tom Hardy Venom.
Yeah.
Well, spoiler alert, when he gets zapped back to his universe,
A little bit of goo
a
sticks
little bit
around.
of goo. So you're going to have, are they going to have Tom Hardy come in and do? No, they're not going to do that. Why would they waste that opportunity to get another, to get Brad Pitt or get somebody like that, and they'll have, they're going to have a Venom in this universe.
Yep.
And you're going to have a Venom in, but they're still going to have the Tom Hardy because those movies do really good. And what are you going to do? You're probably going to see Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man again.
Yeah.
Because it's already in demand. People are crying online
I just hope
about
the
it.
movies are good because, again, he totally turned me around. They had that scene where Toby was like, you're amazing. You need to just say it. And he's just like, no, I'm the lame Spider-Man. He's like, no, you're amazing. So would you just say it? He goes, oh, thanks. I needed to hear it. I'm just like, okay, yeah, I feel you. But it's like, if they do the movies good, I'll be excited.
Yeah, I think they can do them fine, but you can... It's kind of like making a really good cake. You can make great cake all day long, but at some point, don't you kind of get tired of cake?
Yeah.
I mean, like if you eat the same thing over and over again. So it's like I'm kind of dreading it. It's like, okay, everything's going to be Venom for the next. Anything that's Spider-Man related is going to be Venom.
We didn't talk about Lizard at all, even though he's barely in the movie.
He wasn't important in The Amazing Spider-Man. He wasn't important in this movie.
I didn't. I felt about him the way that I felt whenever I saw him in the Amazing Spider-Man. It was fine.
Yeah.
I thought he had that funny line of like, if you want a real makeover, I can give you a makeover. He's like, what? Turn me into a lizard? He's like, exactly.
Yeah.
I thought he had a good line, but that was it.
I mean, it was fine. I didn't have. I wasn't tied to it.
No, they could have been without him.
It could have been without him. But I mean, it was. I mean, they really had to have him, because they had kind of equal it out. Well, they had two from the Raimi and then two from the Andrew Garfield. So
well, really, they had three from Raimi because Sandman was there and Doc Ock and Green Goblin.
Yeah, I guess they did. Well, they had three movies though.
Yeah.
So they
the mains from each.
But if it would have just been it would have been a little lopsided if they just had Jamie Foxx.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Yeah.
And thankfully they didn't bring in like the Green Goblin or the Rhino.
He was
although
imagine
imagine
silhouette up in the universe open with the dimensions opening at the very end. You see his Rhino silhouette.
Imagine if Topher Grace showed up at the bar with Eddie Brock. With Tom Hardy. That actually would have been funny if he was sitting there. He's just like, I have had a crazy past few days, and he's Tom Hardy looks at him. He's like, tell me about it. But yeah, so I thank you, Jeff, so much for coming in and doing this episode with us, because you are one of my number one comic book nerd friends and family members.
Well,
I can tie it always back to you.
There's a lot of comic book fans that we have in our little circle, but like not even all of them. Like Eddie's a big comic book guy, and he don't watch the movies like the day they come out. So
no,
are they on DVD?
So thank you so much for coming on in.
problem.
And since Chris isn't here, Cap, do you have any sort of final thoughts for us?
I'm excited about the new Batman movie.
Oh shit, that's a whole nother episode.
Well, there's one of you. I just hope he sparkles. Actually, I won't even know if he sparkles because I won't go. It'll be just like Eternals. I won't see it.